You are lying flat on your back on the freezing, cracked asphalt of your own driveway. It is exactly 2:14 in the morning. The November rain is falling in heavy, relentless, unforgiving sheets, washing the thick, warm copper taste of your own blood out of your mouth and carrying it in a dark, swirling ribbon down the incline of the pavement and into the municipal storm drain at the edge of the curb. You cannot feel your legs, you cannot feel your left arm. Your vision is tunneling, blurring at the edges, collapsing into a tight, dark, claustrophobic circle illuminated only by the harsh, flickering, sodium orange glow of the street lamp directly above you. There is a man standing over you. He is gripping a heavy, blood-stained solid steel tire iron in his right hand. His knuckles are bone-white from the tension, the tendons in his forearms pulled as tight as piano wire. His chest is heaving violently under a soaked, cheap gray hooded sweatshirt. He is weeping. He is staring down at your shattered body with wide, glassy, completely unhinged eyes. He looks exactly like a desperate, violent addict. He looks exactly like a random burglar who panicked when the homeowner walked outside into the dark to check a noise. He looks exactly like a broken man who just snapped over a bitter, long-standing personal grievance and committed an act of sudden, uncontrollable rage. That is exactly what the local police are going to call him. You know this man, his name is David. 12 years ago, you and David were graduate students in the exact same advanced applied physics cohort at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You were lab partners, you stood as a groomsman at his wedding, you drank cheap beer with him in dive bars, and argued about quantum mechanics until the sun came up. But David washed out of the rigorous, crushing academic program. He developed severe, untreated paranoid schizophrenia. He succumbed to addiction, deep paranoia, and cyclical poverty. His wife left him. He vanished into the invisible underbelly of the city, becoming just another forgotten statistic. You haven't spoken to him in nearly a decade. You haven't even thought about him in years. He just fractured your skull in 3 separate places. As your brain rapidly hemorrhages, as your consciousness begins to slip away into the freezing dark, your hyper-rational scientist mind fights through the agonizing physical trauma. You are a man who has spent his entire life analyzing complex data sets, and in your final moments on this earth, you are forced to analyze the exact data of your own murder. You run the variables, you calculate the trajectory of the events that led to this exact moment. You look up into David's empty, terrified eyes, and you realize the ultimate, horrifying truth of the modern world. David didn't do this because he hates you. David didn't do this because of an old academic grudge. David did not drive here tonight of his own free will. David is a ghost. He is a proxy. He is a remote-controlled weapon. He is a perfectly disposable, algorithmic pawn activated by the most powerful people on the face of the earth and aimed precisely at your head. Tomorrow morning, the local news will run a tragic 30-second segment about a brilliant independent physicist brutally beaten to death in his driveway during a botched robbery or a senseless domestic dispute. It will be framed as a tragedy, case closed. The local district attorney will secure a murder conviction in less than a month. No federal agents will be called to investigate. No investigative journalists will dig into your life, your lab, or your research. The state will lock David away in a psychiatric prison for the rest of his natural life, throwing away the key. The story will vanish into the relentless churn of the 24-hour news cycle. It is the perfect, untraceable, mathematically flawless assassination. But you know exactly why you are bleeding out in your driveway. You are dying because exactly 72 hours ago, you committed the single most unforgivable crime in the history of human civilization. You broke the laws of thermodynamics. You built a machine that makes the global oil industry completely, instantly worthless. Let us rewind the clock. Let us establish the baseline of your reality before you shattered it. Let us go back to the exact moment you signed your own death warrant. It is a Tuesday evening. You are standing in your privately funded, highly secure, off-grid, subterranean applied physics laboratory in upstate New York. You are completely alone. The heavy, reinforced steel door is locked from the inside. The room smells faintly of ozone, hot copper, and sterilized stainless steel. For the last 20 years, you have dedicated your entire life, your professional academic reputation, and your entire inherited personal fortune to a field of study that the mainstream scientific community derides as an absolute impossibility, a pseudoscience, a career killer, a myth, a punchline for tenured professors who rely on government grants to keep their laboratories open. Low-energy nuclear reactions, LENR. The mainstream media and the skeptical public call it cold fusion. The established laws of physics, the laws written in the textbooks funded entirely by the United States Department of Energy and massive corporate syndicates, state that in order to fuse two atomic nuclei together and release net positive energy, you need to recreate the core of a dying star. You need massive multi-billion-dollar tokamak reactors. You must use supercooled, superconducting magnetic coils the size of office buildings to contain a volatile plasma field burning at 100 million degrees Celsius. It requires massive amounts of input energy just to turn the machine on. It is incredibly dangerous. And after 70 years of heavily funded research, it has never produced a commercially viable, self-sustaining net positive output for the civilian power grid. The government wants fusion to be incredibly expensive, highly dangerous, and fiercely centralized. They want it to require massive infrastructure. Because if it requires massive infrastructure, they can put a meter on it. They can monopolize the supply chain, they can regulate it, and they can charge the public for the electricity forever. But you believed the mainstream was fundamentally, deliberately wrong. You believed the universe was infinitely more elegant than that. You believed fusion could happen on a desktop, at room temperature, inside a solid-state metal lattice. You read the suppressed papers of Dr. Eugene Malov. You read the original documentation of Dr. Martin Fleischmann and Dr. Stanley Pons from 1989. You knew they were humiliated and systematically destroyed by the scientific establishment because their discovery threatened the trillion-dollar energy syndicate. You studied the anomalous calorimetry data from the 1990s that the federal government and defense contractors spent millions of dollars trying to publicly debunk and bury. You understood that the establishment wasn't trying to protect science from a hoax. They were trying to protect a global monopoly from a paradigm shift. You knew the math was real. You just had to build the physical architecture to support it. And tonight, you are going to prove that the impossible is real. You are standing in front of your prototype. It is a closed-system electrolytic cell, no larger than a standard commercial microwave oven. It sits heavy and dense on a reinforced stainless steel workbench bolted to the center of the concrete room. Inside the thick, pressurized borosilicate quartz glass vacuum chamber, you have placed a custom-engineered, nanostructured cathode made of pure palladium-107. You spent 4 years milling that palladium yourself. You layered it at the microscopic level, creating highly specific geometric crystalline cavities. You have saturated the vacuum chamber with deuterium gas, heavy hydrogen. It is one of the most abundant, naturally occurring isotopes on the planet. It can be easily, cheaply extracted from standard seawater. A single gallon of seawater contains enough deuterium to power a home for a year. You initiate the final ignition sequence. You are not using brute thermal force. You're not trying to smash the atoms together with 100 million degree lasers. You run a highly specific, oscillating terahertz, radio frequency electromagnetic pulse directly into the palladium cathode. You are utilizing a process called lattice confinement fusion. You are using the microscopic, geometric, crystalline structure of the palladium metal itself to act as a quantum cage. The lattice squeezes the deuterium isotopes so incredibly densely together that they have nowhere left to go. The terahertz frequency vibrates them at their exact quantum resonant frequency. You are not overpowering the Coulomb barrier, the natural electrostatic repulsion that prevents two atomic nuclei from touching. You are slipping right past it using quantum tunneling. You turn the dial on your power supply, you press the execution command on your keyboard, you step back, you stare at the thermal imaging monitors, you hold your breath. The only sound in the room is the high-pitched, sterile whine of the electrical capacitors. For the first 20 minutes, absolutely nothing happens. The input wattage perfectly matches the ambient thermal radiation escaping the glass. You are putting exactly 50 watts of electricity from the wall outlet into the machine. Just enough energy to power a standard incandescent desk lamp. The thermal camera shows the cell hovering at a boring, terrestrial 60 degrees Celsius. You watch the digital readouts. The baseline holds. You feel the heavy, crushing weight of failure beginning to press down on your chest. The ghosts of 1,000 failed experiments whisper in the back of your mind. You wonder if the Department of Energy was right all along. You wonder if you just wasted 20 years of your life chasing a mathematical phantom. And then the universe blinks. At exactly 11:42 p.m., the palladium lattice hits the quantum saturation point. A low, incredibly deep sub-bass vibration begins to shake the room. It is a frequency you feel in your teeth before you hear it with your ears. It doesn't sound like a machine, it sounds like a tectonic plate shifting beneath the crust of the earth. It is the sound of pure, raw, unbound energy. The high-pitched squeal of your thermal sensors begins to spike completely out of their programmed safety parameters. The digital line on your mass calorimeter screen spikes violently upward. It forms a vertical red cliff on the monitor. You scramble backward, knocking over your rolling chair. You check the dosimeters. The Geiger counter sitting on the far desk does not scream. There is no massive burst of lethal Bremsstrahlung radiation. There are no deadly, high-velocity neutrons flooding the room to irradiate your cellular tissue and melt your organs. The reaction is perfectly, beautifully, impossibly clean. It is a completely aneutron reaction. But the heat output is absolutely staggering. You look at the digital telemetry on your main monitor. You wipe your eyes, convinced it is a software glitch. Your input power is exactly 50 watts. The thermal output of the cell is 400 watts, then 1,200 watts, then 8,500 watts. Your heart stops, the breath violently leaves your lungs in a sharp, painful gasp. You lean heavily over the stainless steel desk, your hands shaking so violently you can barely type the diagnostic commands on the keyboard to confirm the readings. You run the software again, you recalibrate the mass spectrometer, you check for a chemical combustion leak, you trace the wiring, looking for an instrumental error, a short circuit, a ghost in the machine. You check the grounding wires, there is no error, the math is absolute. The physics are entirely real. The heavy water inside the chamber isn't just boiling, it is glowing. A faint, impossible, hauntingly beautiful Cherenkov blue light is bleeding out from the core of the palladium lattice, casting long, sharp, wavering shadows across the concrete walls of your basement laboratory. You have achieved anomalous heat excess. You have achieved stable, true ignition. Primal panic and profound, transcendent awe set in simultaneously. The heat radiating from the glass is intense, like opening the door to a blast furnace. You reach forward and slam your hand down on the emergency kill switch to cut the input power. You reach down and pull the physical, thick, black electrical plug entirely out of the wall socket, killing the 50-watt feed. The cord drops to the floor. The reactor doesn't stop. The blue glow stabilizes. The thermal output holds steady at a staggering 24,000 watts. The reactor is feeding its own massive thermal energy back into a localized thermoelectric generator you wired into the base, sustaining its own magnetic resonance field without any external power source. It is pulling zero-point energy directly from the localized quantum vacuum. It is a self-sustaining, continuous, perfectly clean nuclear reaction occurring at room temperature, requiring absolutely zero external input to survive. You have created a miniature, localized sun on a desk in a basement. You run the macroscopic calculations in your head. The deuterium contained in a single glass of tap water, run through your scalable palladium lattice, could power an entire city block for 100 years. It would produce absolutely zero carbon emissions, zero radioactive waste, and it would cost mere pennies to operate. You sit back heavily in your desk chair. You are covered in a cold, freezing sweat. The silence in the basement is deafening, broken only by the low, humming vibration of a machine that is currently, violently, permanently rewriting the geopolitical reality of the planet Earth. In your mind, for about 60 seconds, you see the utopia. You see the Nobel Prize in physics. You see humanity finally graduating to a Type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. You see the immediate, permanent end of the global climate crisis. You see humanity suddenly untethered from the dirt, expanding into the stars with infinite, frictionless power. You see the complete eradication of global poverty. You see massive, limitless desalination plants turning the oceans into infinite drinking water for the developing world. You see a post-scarcity civilization where resource wars over fossil fuels are a dark, bloody relic of the past. But you are a brilliant, historically educated physicist. Your hyper-rational brain quickly bypasses the idealism and crashes brutally into the dark, unforgiving geopolitical reality of the world you actually live in. Your stomach drops into an infinite, freezing void. You realize exactly what you have just built. You haven't just built an energy source. You have built an economic weapon of mass destruction. Look at the true geometry of global power. Look at the invisible architecture of the world. The world is not run by politicians. It is not run by democratic elections or invisible borders or human rights treaties. The world is run by a mathematical construct called the petrodollar. In 1971, the Nixon administration decoupled the United States dollar from the gold standard. By 1973, a new system was born. The global financial system was anchored to a single, finite, highly controllable commodity. The United States dollar is the world's reserve currency entirely because global oil trades must be conducted in U.S. dollars. The sovereign wealth funds of the Middle East, the trillion-dollar defense contracting empires, the multinational energy conglomerates, the massive banking syndicates on Wall Street, all of it relies on one single, unbreakable, foundational concept. Energy must be scarce. Energy must be expensive. Energy must be consumable. And it must require a physical, logistical supply chain completely controlled by the elite. If this glass box sitting on your workbench exists, the price of a barrel of crude oil drops to absolute zero by tomorrow morning. Coal becomes useless rocks. Natural gas becomes a historical footnote. If oil goes to zero, the petrodollar evaporates overnight. If the petrodollar evaporates, the United States economy instantly, catastrophically defaults on its unimaginable debt. The global financial system shatters in a matter of hours. Millions of people lose their pensions. The United States military, an apparatus that exists largely to secure global shipping lanes for hydrocarbons and enforce dollar hegemony, loses its primary strategic mandate. The largest, most powerful corporations on the planet go bankrupt before Wall Street even opens. Entire nations will collapse. Trillions of dollars of established wealth will vanish into thin air. You realize the shadow government, the unspoken, blood-soaked alliance of intelligence agencies, defense contractors, and energy cartels, does not want to save the world. They want to own it, and they will burn the entire planet to a cinder before they surrender their absolute monopoly on human progress. You cannot file a patent. You know the law. Under the United States Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, Title 35, Section 181, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have the absolute legal authority to classify, seize, and completely suppress any civilian patent application that poses a threat to the economic stability or national security of the nation. Currently, there are over 6,000 patents locked in dark federal vaults under this exact law that the public is not allowed to see. The vast majority of them relate to alternative energy systems. If you take this to the patent office, if you take this to a university board, or if you take this to the government, they will immediately issue a secrecy order. They will raid your lab, they will legally confiscate your prototypes, they will classify the technology under the highest levels of national security, and you will be issued a federal gag order. If you ever speak of cold fusion again to the press, you will vanish into a federal black site under the Espionage Act, never to be seen again. But cold fusion is far too dangerous for a simple patent gag order. If the mathematical parameters of the Palladium lattice get onto the open internet, humanity changes forever. The cartel won't just classify it, they will bury it entirely, and they will permanently, brutally bury the man who built it. Pure, unadulterated panic sets in. Pure adrenaline floods your central nervous system. You realize that you are sitting in a locked room with a live, unpinned, geopolitical hand grenade. The only way to save the world, the only way to ensure this technology survives you, and the only way to save your own life is to open source the data immediately. You cannot profit from this. You cannot be the hero on the cover of Time magazine. You have to put the blueprint on the internet. You have to seed it to thousands of decentralized peer-to-peer blockchain servers so that independent engineers and physicists across the globe can download the schematics, replicate it, and build it. Before the National Security Agency can scrub the files from the web, if 1 million people have the blueprint, you are no longer a target. You are just a messenger. You sit down at your secure terminal. Your hands are shaking so violently you are missing keystrokes and having to retype your passwords. You begin compiling the raw telemetry data. You package the engineering CAD schematics. You document the exact terahertz electromagnetic radio frequencies required for the resonance pulse. You precisely detail the microscopic metallurgical atomic composition of the palladium lattice. You zip the massive archive into a heavily encrypted folder. You connect your isolated, air-gapped lab terminal to your commercial, hardwired internet router. You open a secure Tor browser. You bounce your IP address through a dozen anonymous proxy servers across Eastern Europe and South America. You navigate to an anonymous, bulletproof, open-source scientific repository hosted in a subterranean data center in Switzerland. You click Upload. The progress bar appears on your screen. It hits 1%, 3%, 8%. The digital packet is flying through the fiber optic lines. The progress bar hits 14%, and then the digital guillotine drops. A harsh, heavy digital click echoes from your server rack. It is the sound of a physical modem severing a hardware connection. Absolute, crushing silence follows. Your computer screen goes completely black. It is not a standard shutdown sequence. It is not a blue screen of death. It is a hard, instantaneous, remote termination of the motherboard's BIOS. Before you can even process the digital crash, the main electrical power to your entire laboratory is violently severed. The heavy, rhythmic thrumming of the industrial air conditioning units dies instantly. The overhead fluorescent lights pop loudly and go totally dark. The only illumination left in the entire room is the eerie, pulsing blue Cherenkov glow of the miniature star sitting quietly on your workbench. You stand up, your chair scraping loudly against the concrete floor. You pull out your personal cell phone. You look at the screen. It says no service. The SOS satellite emergency function is disabled. You look at the network signal bars. They aren't just empty, they are displaying a static red hexadecimal error code. You are being actively jammed by a localized military-grade cell site simulator. An IMSI catcher, a dirt box, a stingray device. You realize with a sickening drop in your stomach the terrifying truth of the modern surveillance state. The National Security Agency, the Department of Energy, and the global corporate syndicates don't have men in black suits, sitting in unmarked vans across the street watching you through binoculars. That is Hollywood. The real deep state does not need binoculars. They use Echelon, they use Prism, they use X-Keyscore. They use highly classified, autonomous, trillion-dollar algorithmic dragnets that constantly monitor the exact intersection of the physical infrastructure and global digital traffic in real time. You built your lab completely off the grid, running off localized solar and battery banks, but you still pull your baseline electricity from the county power grid to run your ambient cooling units and your servers. Your house, sitting directly above the lab, like almost every modern house in America, is equipped with a digital smart meter. The exact moment your reactor hit 24,000 watts of thermal output without drawing a single watt of energy from the commercial grid, the smart meter flagged an impossible thermodynamic anomaly. A house cannot generate massive heat without drawing massive power unless it is burning something large. But there was no natural gas spike. It registered a massive heat signature that completely defied your electrical draw. The packet of anomalous data was routed instantly to an NSA server farm deep in the Bluffdale, Utah desert. The artificial intelligence system ran a microsecond automated cross-reference on your name. It pulled your background in applied plasma physics. It pulled your recent chemical purchases of heavy water and palladium. It analyzed your encrypted internet search history. It analyzed the encrypted metadata of the massive file you were trying to upload to Switzerland. The algorithm analyzed the physics, realized the thermodynamic anomaly was mathematically real, and triggered an automated Class 1 containment protocol. They severed your digital connection to the world before the progress bar even hit 15%. They initiated a BGP route hijacking, effectively deleting your IP address from the global internet. You are in the dark, you have been digitally quarantined, you are completely cut off from the human race, you are trapped in a Faraday cage of their making, and you know exactly what comes next. They are coming for the reactor, and they are coming for your brain. The Zersitzung begins immediately. Zersitzung is a psychological warfare technique originally developed by the East German Stasi and perfected by modern Western intelligence agencies. It translates to decomposition. It is the systemic, psychological destruction of a target's reality. While you are frantically running around the pitch-black basement, packing the glowing reactor core into a heavy, lead-lined Faraday bag, the deep state's threat assessment algorithms are executing a flawless, automated destruction protocol miles away. They do not deploy a tactical wet work hit squad to your house. A tactical team kicking down your door leaves bullet holes. A tactical team leaves forensic evidence. A tactical team draws the FBI, local homicide detectives, and investigative journalists. A tactical team implies a grand, organized conspiracy. They need this to look entirely natural. They need a proxy weapon. They need stochastic terrorism via algorithmic targeting. They need someone else to pull the trigger so they can keep their hands perfectly clean. The intelligence apparatus accesses the massive, unregulated dragnet of psychological and behavioral data harvested by social media companies, data brokers, healthcare providers, and telecom networks. They run a psychological, financial, and geographic query on your entire social and professional network spanning the last 20 years. They are searching for a highly specific profile, a vulnerability, a weapon, someone close enough to you geographically to make the murder plausible, but disconnected enough socially so it seems like an isolated event. Someone who can be pushed over the edge. They find him in less than 12 seconds. David, your former MIT lab partner. His digital medical records, illegally accessed through a backdoor in his insurance provider's database, indicate severe treatment-resistant paranoid schizophrenia and intermittent explosive disorder. His financial records indicate he is currently 90 days past due on rent. His credit cards are maxed out, and he is facing imminent eviction from a rundown apartment 30 miles away. His digital footprint indicates he spends 14 hours a day on fringe internet forums, obsessing over gang stalking, directed energy weapons, corporate espionage, and government mind control. He is highly unstable. He is prone to sudden violence. He possesses a pre-existing, deeply internalized, highly documented academic grievance against you for succeeding where he failed. He is the perfect, fragile, unstable human kinetic asset. The cyber division goes to work on David's digital reality. They isolate him in a customized, synthetic nightmare. Sitting in his dark, filthy apartment on Wednesday afternoon, David's smartphone begins to flood with hyper-targeted, maliciously injected advertisements and forum posts. The algorithm feeds him fabricated emails that look exactly cryptographically identical to your personal account. The fake emails boast about how you stole his original thesis 12 years ago, how you used his math to build your machine, how you're going to make billions of dollars off his sweat and lock him out of the patent entirely, how you have been watching him suffer from afar and enjoying it. The algorithm injects a deep-fake audio file directly into his podcast feed. The audio sounds exactly like you. It is your voice, perfectly synthesized by a neural network, capturing your exact cadence and inflection. The voice in his headphones mocks his mental illness. It laughs cruelly with a colleague about how you ruined his life, laughing about how you had him blacklisted from the physics industry, how you pay people to follow him in the street and tap his phone. Then they attack his physical environment. A localized cyber attack freezes his bank account, reducing his balance to absolute zero and declining his card at the grocery store. His digital pharmacy prescription for his critical antipsychotic medication is remotely canceled by a spoofed doctor's order, ensuring he goes into agonizing chemical withdrawal. When he calls the pharmacy, his calls are intercepted and routed to an AI voice bot that tells him his insurance has been permanently revoked due to fraud. The system triggers a forced, cascading psychological break. The government does not have to kidnap him and brainwash him in a secret MK-Ultra facility strapped to a chair with electrodes. They just use the internet and the smartphone in his pocket to pour synthetic gasoline on the fire inside his broken mind. They build a psychological pressure cooker, lock him inside it, seal all the exits, turn up the heat, and point the release valve directly at your skull. Then they deliver the final, lethal push. On Thursday night, exactly 60 hours after you achieved ignition, a text message arrives on David's phone from an untraceable spoofed number. It contains your home address. It contains the exact make, model, and license plate of your car. It contains a live GPS pin of your location. And it contains a single, carefully engineered, highly manipulative sentence designed to trigger his absolute worst delusion. He is taking the stolen files to the press right now. He is going to ruin you forever. Stop him. David's mind snaps completely. The last fragile tether holding him to reality severs entirely. He grabs a heavy, solid steel tire iron from his hallway closet. He gets in his rusted truck. The cartel has successfully armed the ghost, and they pointed him at your driveway. Thursday night, 2:12 a.m. The heavy driving rain is oppressive and violent. You have the encrypted, titanium-cased USB hard drive shoved deep into the pocket of your waterproof jacket. You have the heavy, waterproof Pelican case containing the glowing reactor core clutched tightly to your chest. You are walking out your front door, stepping into the freezing, driving rain, preparing to drive to a public library 2 towns over. You're going to break a window, access an unmonitored IP address on a public burner terminal, and upload the fusion blueprints to the blockchain before the sun comes up. You're going to save the world. You step onto the wet asphalt of your driveway. The neighborhood is completely, unnaturally dark. The streetlights at the end of your cul-de-sac have been remotely deactivated by the city's municipal grid control. It is pitch black. The only sound is the rain hammering against the pavement. You hear a heavy, wet footstep splashing on the asphalt directly behind you. You turn around. David is standing in the deep shadow of your weeping willow tree. He is soaked to the bone. His eyes are wide and unblinking, glowing with a terrifying, vacant madness. You freeze. Every muscle in your body locks up. Your heart hammers violently against your ribs. The Pelican case grows incredibly heavy in your arms. You ask him what he's doing here. He doesn't answer you. He steps forward into the ambient, dim light spilling from your open front door. You see the heavy steel tire iron gripped tightly in his right hand. He screams over the deafening sound of the rain. His voice is cracking, raw, with manufactured agony and absolute conviction. He tells you that you stole it from him. He tells you that you took his money. He tells you that you put the bugs in his phone, that he knows you did it, that he heard the voicemail. He tells you that he knows you are watching him. You hold your hands up, still clutching the Pelican case to your chest. You try to speak. You try to use your calm, rational scientist voice to de-escalate the hallucination. You try to use logic against a man who no longer lives in a logical universe. You tell him to listen to you. You tell him you haven't spoken to him in a decade. You tell him he is sick. You tell him someone hacked his phone. You tell him they are using him to stop you from leaving this property. You beg him to look at you, to realize it is a setup. You tell him he has to let you leave. You never finish the sentence. The psychological conditioning holds perfectly. David doesn't see a brilliant physicist who just saved the world from climate collapse. He doesn't see an old friend. He sees the demon that ruined his life. He sees the architect of his suffering. He lunges. A sickening, brutal crack of heavy solid steel hitting human bone echoes into the night. The first strike is blindingly fast. The heavy steel bar connects directly with your left collarbone. You hear the wet, horrific snap of the bone breaking in half. The kinetic force is staggering. It lifts your feet completely off the ground, dropping you hard onto the wet asphalt. The Pelican case spills from your hands. The encrypted thumb drive clatters out of your pocket and onto the wet driveway, bouncing into a puddle. You cry out, a pathetic, breathless sound, scrambling backward, tearing the skin off your palms as you hit the sharp, rough gravel. David steps over you. He raises the tire iron high above his head with both hands. He is screaming wildly, incoherently about emails you never wrote, about money you never made, about a betrayal that never actually happened, about a conspiracy that exists only in the digital prison they built for him. He brings the solid steel down directly onto the side of your skull. The world flashes blinding white, an explosion of pure agony, then instantly goes pitch black. The laws of physics betray you. Gravity pulls you violently to the earth, and now you are lying on your back. The freezing rain is washing the blood into the storm drain. You cannot move. Your vision is narrowing to a single, tiny point of light. David drops the tire iron. It clatters loudly against the driveway. He falls to his knees beside you. The homicidal adrenaline immediately drains from his system, replaced instantly by the crushing, devastating realization of what he has just done. The madness recedes just enough to let the horror in. He looks at his bloody hands. He looks at your shattered head. He begins to weep, a pathetic, hollow, broken sound echoing in the rain of a man who just woke up from a nightmare only to realize he is still in it. Through the fading static in your hemorrhaging brain, you look past David's shaking shoulder. At the end of your long, dark driveway, you see the slow, methodical approach of a vehicle. It is a dark, heavily armored, unmarked SUV. Its headlights are entirely off. It rolls silently to a stop just outside your property line, the massive V8 engine idling with a low, menacing, heavy purr. 4 men step out of the vehicle. They are dressed in sterile, dark raincoats. They wear blue surgical nitrile gloves. They move with terrifying, practiced military precision. They do not speak to each other. They do not draw weapons. They do not need to. The violence is already over. The kinetic asset did the heavy lifting exactly as programmed. 2 of the men walk straight past you, stepping casually over the expanding pool of your blood, and enter your house through the open front door. They are going down to the basement. They are going to pour military-grade chemical thermite directly onto your server racks. They are going to wipe your local cloud backups with highly classified cryptographic scrubbers. They are going to completely erase your existence from the physical and digital world. The 3rd man walks to the Pelican case lying on the driveway. He opens the latch. He looks at the impossible, glowing miniature star. He closes the case. He bends down and picks up the encrypted thumb drive from the puddle, slipping it into his coat pocket. He turns around and carries the absolute miracle that would have saved human civilization back to the SUV, locking it inside a heavy lead-lined safe in the trunk. The 4th man walks up the driveway and stops directly in front of David. David looks up, his eyes wide with absolute primal terror. He sees the men in the suits. He looks at the man taking the Pelican case. He looks at the blue gloves. He realizes in a sudden, horrifying flash of total lucidity that you were telling the exact truth. He was manipulated. He was a pawn. He was a ghost in their machine. David sobs, scrambling backward on the wet asphalt, leaving streaks of your blood on the driveway. He begs to know who they are. The man in the suit pauses. He looks down at David with the bored, clinical, utterly terrifying detachment of an exterminator checking a mousetrap. He tells David that they are the system. His voice is completely dead, devoid of any human inflection or empathy. He tells him that the local police are on their way and that he should really start thinking about his confession. The man turns his back, gets into the dark SUV, and shuts the heavy armored door. The vehicle reverses silently into the night, disappearing completely into the black and the rain, taking the future of humanity with it. They leave David weeping on the lawn. They leave the bloody tire iron lying next to your hand. They leave the perfect, undeniable, easily prosecutable crime scene for the local police detectives to find. When David is arrested in 20 minutes, his digital footprint will perfectly corroborate his psychotic delusion. The detectives will find the forged emails on his phone. They will find his erratic forum posts and his manifesto. The district attorney will file it as a second-degree murder driven by a tragic, paranoid delusion. There will be no federal investigation. There will be no wild conspiracy theories reported on the evening news. The fossil fuel cartel will never be mentioned in the courtroom. The technology will be locked in a dark vault under the Invention Secrecy Act, never to see the light of day. In 2004, Dr. Eugene Malov was beaten to death in his driveway under identical circumstances, and the world simply kept turning, kept burning coal, kept fighting wars for oil. You close your eyes. The rain is so incredibly cold. You built a miniature sun. You bypassed the Coulomb barrier. You proved that infinite energy is real. You proved that humanity doesn't have to burn the earth to survive. You proved that we could reach the stars, that we could build a paradise. You handed them the keys to a utopia. But as your heart beats for the final time, bleeding out on your own driveway, you finally understand the darkest, most absolute law of physics. Power does not yield. Power does not share. Power only protects itself. If you build a machine that can change the world will simply build a machine to erase you.